Board was up.
Board members, this actually, the item that was on here was requested by Chairman Valadez on impact fees. And I don't know exactly what the discussion or what my understanding was. We were going to have a commissioner here that had some concerns on the impact fees. But I really don't, he was the one that requested this item be placed on the agenda.
Yeah, but I thought that PB would put a presentation together for the commissioner to educate him on the impact fees.
We can do that.
Are we prepared for something like that?
Well, we weren't told what it was for. We thought it was a discussion only, but we can discuss where we are with the program and get any questions he may have.
Mr. Commissioner, please don't I hope it doesn't appear that we're not prepared. It's that I think people didn't realize exactly what you needed. I knew what you wanted, but staff obviously it's not.
We weren't sure whether it was question and answer or presentation you wanted, Commissioner.
Well, if you all have a presentation, I'd like to hear it.
That'd be the best.
Do you want to go through it, Eddie? We don't have it up though, do we?
What we did, the last presentation was done, the one that was done before the board was the one that Black and Beach did, and that was how they determined the maximum allowable.
I think that's what he needs to hear. What it is, an ESU. How do we come up with ESUs to come up with a formula that?
Let me give the board at least an update on where we are.
Okay.
One is that, as you're aware, the committee completed its review of the land use assumption plan. It completed its review of the capital improvements plan. It also reviewed the calculation for the maximum allowable. All of that was done in March. It also recommended to the City Commission that they approve the land use assumption plan, that they approve the capital improvement plan, and that they also reviewed the method of calculation for the maximum allowable and have no questions with that and recommend they approve the process. They fell short, however, making any recommendation as to where the impact fee should be, whether it should be adopting the maximum allowable or any version thereof. As everybody's aware, the statute 395, which is the local government code, it does have provisions on how you determine what that maximum allowable are, but there's nothing in that piece of or that law that indicates that the governing body or the City Commission is bound by adopting what the maximum allowable is. The City Commission has received all that information, or the city has. They have set a date for the public hearing, and that date has been set for August the 16th. 15th or 16th. We have heard that there may be some differences of how they're going to hold the public hearing. Essentially, their recommendation was to do all three of them at one time. We've had some discussion whether that's going to happen or not, but all we know at this point is that the hearing has been set for the 15th or 16th of August. They will have to have a public hearing to consider the land use assumption plan, to consider the capital improvement plan, and then they will also obviously hold up the public hearing to consider comments on the impact fee before they take any action on setting that impact fee. Where we are today with a consultant, Black and Beach, is that they are finalizing the report on the impact fee, which essentially all that is embodying all of the work they've done. What you have seen is the presentation on the calculation of the maximum allowable. You've seen the land use assumption plan, and you've seen the CIP. All of that is going to get embodied into one single report, and we should be getting that certainly well before the public hearing on the 15th or 16th, whatever date in August. So we're expecting to receive that. When we get that, we'll obviously forward a copy to the board as well as to the city folks so they have the final report. That's where we are today on that process.
For the purpose of the commissioner, where are you? Good, I'm sorry. the land use is based on future growth, not as it is right now. Okay? And the ESUs are the equivalent service units to meet that growth. In other words, how many lots are they going to develop per acre? Okay? And we came out with how many ESUs?
Well,
Over a 5-year land use plan, which was how many?
I want to say it's somewhere around 14,005 additional ESUs.
So we're saying like 14,500.
John's got it right there in front of him.
If the, more or less, this is what you get. If the growth continues the way it's going, okay, which I think is optimistic, the more ESUs, the lower the cost of the impact. The higher, okay, we took the higher number, okay. This is the cost of the infrastructure to meet the development of the land use, okay, land. The cost to the city, PUP, will be approximately about 84 million, is that right?
84.6 is what the CIP is. Or
I said approximately, I get the little numbers and pennies and all that stuff, but 84 million, 85 million. That's the cost of the infrastructure needed to meet the demand for the future growth. That means the developers, 14,500 units, 14,500 homes will need all this infrastructure, including a waste plant, okay? A sewage plant to meet that growth, okay? That costs 25 million. So the maximum allowable, we're not here to recommend what it should be because that's the city commission's job. The maximum allowable based on the land use, based on the ESUs, equivalent service units, based on the cost to develop, to meet the development needs, developers' needs, okay, 84 million, 84.6. That's what we came up with the maximum allowable. The choice of the commission is going to be very simple. Okay. Either the developers pay for their needs to develop their land to provide their business the infrastructure needed so we can service it, okay? But somebody's got to pay for that cost. Okay? Or,
Who's paying for it right now?
right now, PUB is paying.
PUB
Well, the customers.
Ratepayers.
Ratepayers will pay.
are paying for the hookups to all these acres that the developers are.
The developers were paying a very minimal amount, nominal amount, okay? Not enough to cover it.
It was my understanding that they pay to extend to their land. Do they not?
Pay for the infrastructure, okay? For all for all the stuff they have in their project, they pay for it, okay? PB pays for whatever they line that goes up to that infrastructure.
What does something like that cost?
Sign.
Okay.
Okay.
Let him finish.
I was going to say a couple of things.
Let's not get the commission confused.
You're talking about impact fees, you're talking about development policies, all mixed in the same pot. Impact fees are just a portion of what developers pay to develop their land. That's just one portion. They've got a lot of other costs that have to be considered. One comment I'd like to make is we did a land use assumption that looks at a 5-year and a CIP that looks at a 5-year. And the reason for that was the consultant recommended that we go ahead and do a 5-year, since in 5 years we're going to be back here amending the plan or looking at it again. And so consequently, while the statute does say that you can look up to a 10-year, it doesn't say you must do a 10-year. So they recommended we do a 5-year, and that's why we have a land use plan with a 5-year planning horizon and a capital improvement plan with a 5-year planning horizon. The total number of ESU growth, the equivalent service units, is anticipated to be about 14,778. The reason that number is important is because part of the formula that is used to calculate what is the ceiling that you can charge, the maximum allowable, that is a credit back into the formula because you will be generating revenue from what you anticipate your new customer growth will be. The other thing about impact fees are only applicable to water and sewer projects, and they're only applicable to certain types of projects. And in this case, you're looking at projects that are going to add capacity, future capacity to the water and wastewater system. Impact fees cannot be used for general revenue, for example, can't be used for just general operations. They can't be used for replacement. They can't be used to comply with environmental compliance on permit issues. They can only be used for the purpose of looking at those projects that have that add capacity to the system in the future. Now, when we hired Black & Veatch, We hired Black & Veatch, the engineering firm, to help us do this, to essentially help us with this process. Their charge was to help develop the land use assumption plan. Their charge was to help us review the capital improvement project plan, because our capital improvement plan is about $140 million. But we're charged with assisting us to go through the projects and helping us determine which projects were applicable for capital improvements and which ones were not. Because you're not going to put in here, a new building, for example, for PUB. You can't do that. So they were charged with helping us do that. Once we reached both of those milestones, then they were charged with taking that information, applying Law 395, applying the formula that is used to determine what the maximum allowable is, and going through that conversion process. Of those three things, they have done all three. And so that is what they helped us. They weren't hired to engineer the projects. They weren't hired to design the projects. They were hired to assist us in looking at the projects and helping determine, of those projects that you have in your capital improvement plan, which ones of those are justifiable for impact fee application. And so they did that. The Capital Improvements Advisory Committee, which is a committee that the City Commission appoints, because in this case, the governing body is the City Commission. It's not the Board of Directors of PUB. When they appointed that committee, they appointed 7 members to serve on that committee. There's also very clear in that statute, 395, that when you appoint members of that committee, a certain percentage have to represent certain parts of the business community. At least 40% of the makeup must include someone from the development community, from the real estate community, from the building community. So the City Commission took all into account when they appointed the members of the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. Probably most of the time spent by the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee was on reviewing the capital improvement plan. There was a lot of discussion, Commissioner, a lot of debate whether to include a new sewage treatment plant in the plan or to do an expansion of an existing one. After a lot of discussion back and forth, the consensus was to include a new sewage treatment plant in the process. So, the committee did go through that. They did look at them, and so what staff did was develop the projects, develop the cost estimates, presented that information, and that was all reviewed and discussed back and forth. That's where we are now is essentially waiting for the public hearing process to go through that discussion, to go through that debate. Obviously, you will have people, the development community and others who will speak at those public hearings, ask questions or whatever. But, ultimately, at this point, we've done at least what is required under the statute to meet the point where you can determine what that maximum allowable is. And again, all it does is a guide. It sets a ceiling that says, if you consider impact fees, as long as you don't go beyond this amount, that's the ceiling on it.
Let me ask you something. If we meet at a certain point or a certain number that doesn't reach that ceiling, who pays the rest of that?
Well, a lot of that will be driven by your capital improvement plan. PUB only generates money 2 ways. You either collect it from ratepayers or you collect it from someone else. In the case of subdivision development or development, developers pay a good share of that. If you have a $45 million or an $80 million capital improvement plan, and you're only going to collect, 20 million of that, but you still need to do that 80 million, well, you've got to go out and borrow money. So, and when you go out and borrow money, since we don't get any tax dollars, we're supported strictly from revenue from the ratepayers, then you have to pledge the full faith and credit of the utility system. So that does have some bearing on calculating rates, because you have to demonstrate an ability to pay that money back. It isn't as clear as a one-for-one impact, but it does have some impact. An example would be since 1990, when the fees were adopted. In 1990, when the impact fee study, the first one that was done, see, we're amending an existing plan. In 1990, when the first impact fee study was there, the recommendation on the maximum allowable for water and sewer was about $2,150. The amount that was set was about $280. So in that time, you've collected impact fee revenue, but you've also had to do a lot of improvements to the system related to growth. I mean, that's a good thing. We've been growing. There's been a lot of development. And so in order to do those projects, if you're not generating the cash through your system, then you've got to go out and borrow. And we have borrowed a lot of money for water improvements, for sewer improvements. And so that debt has to be secured, and the way you secure it is with rates. So there is some cost associated with implementing those projects that are embedded into the rates. If you take the position that, well, let's just pay for them as we collect the money, a lot of these projects would not get done in a timely manner, because simply we will not collect the money fast enough to cover the cost of doing those projects.
Commissioner, let me clarify what went on between the developers or the board on your question about what a developer pays for. They pay all the infrastructure costs within the property charge standards, whether it be streets, drainage, water, and sewer. They may also pay for a pump station or a line extension to our closest facility. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If there's one there, they don't have to extend. If there is, then they have to extend that. When they extend that, we have a reimbursement policy where if the developer oversizes that, as other people connect, we collect and reimburse those developers. Now, where the impact fees come in are above and beyond that. For our water plant, like the Southmost Regional Plant, that was paid through revenue, rates. Major interceptors along 802 that their facilities connect to would have to be oversized and redone. That's the stuff that we pay through the rates, or can be paid through by impact fees. Right now, the fees aren't adequate to pay for those improvements, so most of that is borne by the rates. In the last 15 years, we did about $90 million of improvements that were not paid by impact fees, and that was about a third of your utility bill. About $10 a month went towards paying for that $90 million. So
This issue's from California, Florida. It's just going all over the nation.
nationwide.
What are people doing? What are they deciding on? Well, are we looking at what California's doing, Florida's doing, as far as taking care of it? Or is everybody just telling it?
Everybody's different, and it's how do you compare with your competitors with rates? If you're lower than anybody, maybe you can raise your rates and have a lower impact. If your rates are higher than your competitors, maybe you need a higher impact fee. So everybody's different on. Right now, our board is concerned because our rates are the highest in the valley, or in this area.
And that's why I'm here, because I'm a ratepayer.
Sure.
And my attitude about this is, what are we gonna do to keep these rates from going up? And let me ask you something. Say we charge the developers whatever we charge them. Is that gonna guarantee that these rates aren't gonna go up, or it still may go up because of
They'll
gas?
go up. They may not go up as much.
Let me answer that. First of all, to answer your question, in 1990, there was a study done and a recommendation of what the impact fee should be, which was, I think, $280. The impact fee was $280, and the recommendation, I think, was $2,200.
2133,
Okay, 2,150.
2150.
That was the recommended rate. We didn't implement it. We continued to charge $280. That added about 30% on the customer.
Why wasn't it implemented?
The board didn't do it.
Even though
Well, it went to the commission.
lots of money
Yeah,
to.
commission elected to do it through rates.
Just like it's gonna go to you, you're gonna vote for it.
Let me finish. The difference between the 2,150 and the 280, okay, to meet the need of the developments, okay, was passed on to the ratepayer, which ended up costing the ratepayer about 30% of their utility bill. 30%. In addition to that, anytime rates were increased because of the high cost of fuel, cost of operations, on top of that, that's why we are one of the highest in the region as far as rates. In order to control that, we have come back and revisited this issue and have determined, and it was determined by the board, and also a committee was created, Capital Improvements Committee, and it was adopted unanimously, okay, what it should be. Okay. We got somebody to do the study, and they made a recommendation and sent to the city commission. But the capital improvements was adopted unanimously to adopt it in order to meet the future growth. It has to be done. 140 million, but out of that 140 million, 84 million is directly linked to the developer's needs, okay, in order to service those new units, okay? So the choice is very simple. You either decide to it's driven by cost by the development, let them pay their share, which is being incurred by them, or if you decide to lower it, then you're gonna have to pass the additional cost to the ratepayers. And we're gonna have to go to you and say, you have to raise rates to cover these expenses, okay? What some people feel is, it's not fair, okay, to charge versus you that already has a unit, a house, it exists, the fees have been paid, that you should subsidize and pay the new developments, for the new developments, okay? In other words, the sewer plant that exists right now services you. The new development is going to need new sewer plant. You're going to pay for that sewer plant if you don't pay what was recommended. You follow what I'm saying? Okay. So it's driven by cost. What's coming down the pipe is going to have to be paid by somebody. And some of us feel that the developer should pay, pass it on to their customers, and not penalize the existing customers. Or if that's not the thinking of the commission, then you're going to have to come up with the rest of the money to meet those needs. Or stop growing. Say, hey, we're not going to build a sewer plant because we can't afford it. So we stop growing. We don't develop.
I think when we go to the commission, in the hearings, we'll show you what the impact fee is and what the rates will need to be. And then, you know, it's kind of like if you adopt one, you're committing to the other, because otherwise, as Mr. Amata said, we can't build these, we can't go borrow the money or go to New York without one or two in the place. So we stop issuing meters, or we stop. So just how are we going to pay for these things?
The other thing is, there's some thinking there that we should do a 10-year plan, okay? Our planning right now, the way it's recommended, is based on 5 years, 5-year need. If we were to do a 10-year, then we have to add more ESUs. We have to add more capacity in other areas. So then the cost would not be 84 million, it'd be 160 million, let's say. So it's the same thing. You either do it in 5 years with this amount, or if you want to project 10 years, then let's increase the infrastructure needed to meet that. But it was recommended 5-year because that's more realistic in its projections. The other thing is that we had representation on the committee, Capital Improvements Committee, from engineers, developers, P&Z. The P&Z was representative was the chairman. So we had a good cross-section of people in the industry, okay? And they felt unanimously and adopted that the projections recommended by staff and the city and everything were realistic. And that's what the analysis was based on.
Commissioner, one comment you made about impact fees. Impact fees are not unique to Brownsville or to Texas. It's something that's all over the country. Different states have different requirements. Impact fees, for example, we're only talking about water and sewer. There's impact fees for drainage. There's impact fees, and some states have impact fees for electrical. So, I mean, it's not something that's unique to this community. And a lot of the issues that you will hear and that you'll have to deal with are not unique to Brownsville. You know, what is the impact on future development? You know, what is the impact on home building? What is the impact of developing projects? I mean, those discussions happen wherever there is probably this debate going on whether or not you should raise impact fees. And no two communities are alike. Financial, you know, one of the comments that we have heard is that we have a 5-year capital improvement plan that is 84.6 million, and San Antonio has a 10-year capital improvement plan that's 90-something million. How can that be? That city is so big, and you know, well, you're not comparing apples to apples. One example might be in San Antonio, they have 110, 111 lift stations. They may be 5 times, 10 times the area that we are, but we have 153 lift stations. It's just a different scenario here and over there, and those are costly. Those are moving parts that have to be fixed and repaired, and so just about every development now has a lift station. We don't have a lot of gravity. I mean, here, you know, it just doesn't flow. So you can't make those kinds of comparisons because every situation is different. What we can do is, and for going forward, is ensuring that when we look at 395 and look at the process for amending the impact fees that we follow the letter of the law. And that was one of the reasons that Black and Veatch was hired. In fact, Black and Veatch is the company that did the impact fee analysis for San Antonio. It's to help us go through that process and ensure that we can put together what would essentially be a defensible plan. And so we've gone through that. Could we have done more? You can always do more. But we didn't do any less than was required of us. And so that's been the work that has the committee, the staff has been working with, and that's kind of where we are today.
And the reason why I'm here is I represent 20,000 people in my district. In East Side, District 2. And a lot of them, it's a poor side of town. I'm not going to, why even argue that point, but a lot of these people have called me and asked me about their rates and how, my question is, what's the impact of, or what's the percentage, if you can tell me, are these impact fees causing on the rates going up? Or is it? Maybe it isn't. Maybe
30%.
Huh?
30%, that's the calculations we came up with.
30% of the reason why our rates are going up is because we're not charging impact fees.
Well, we are charging impact fees, just
Not
not.
enough. We're charging 280 instead of 2,000.
And then you were to charge,
If we would have charged the recommended amount from 1990, then that 30% savings would be seen today.
would it be cut in half, the percentage?
No, 30%.
30%.
Whatever your bill is, if it's $100, $70.
In other words, the ratepayers have to pay the difference between the 2,150 and the $280. Somebody had to pay for it. And it was passed on to the ratepayers.
Just
So
like,
I recommend to you, Commissioner, for the purpose of education, of course, that you, if you have any influence in the commission, to host these public hearings. If they're going to host 3, to hold them out throughout different parts of the city, not one in one day in one place. Take the meetings to the committee, to the community, on the east side, the southmost, the west side. That's what I would do. I'd have 3 public hearings. That way you get people informed. And people need to go out and voice their concerns that either they are for subsidizing these costs, or they don't want to subsidize these costs. They want the user to pay for these costs. Now, there is no study to show that impact fees slows growth. What was driven, the construction here is the low interest rates, the cost of land, and other many factors. But there's no study that shows that impact fees stops growth. Yeah, stops growth. Many communities have impact fees. They just call them different things. Go to Rio Hondo, their impact fees is higher than ours. Go to Harlingen, go to McCann, they have different impact fees. The problem with us is that what makes us unique is that we own the utility system. That makes us a little separate, a little different from the rest. We own the utility system. And some of the things that we're going to be doing right now is perhaps some of the things that we should have done all along, okay? And because we don't do it, now somebody's got to pay for it. Follow what I'm saying? So, like the sewer plant. The sewer plant is almost up to capacity. So what do? We got to plan for a new one. We weren't planning for a new one. But now that this issue's come up, we found a way that it can be done to meet future growth by planning proactively instead of reacting to it.
How does that impact fee work as far as when a developer pays that impact fee, he gets credited?
Well, that's separate. Like as he was explaining, those lines that are leading up to the subdivision, all that stuff, the developer pays for it already. Okay, he pays
So the developer does pay
for that portion of it. Yeah, that's his development. And when the line's oversized more than what he really needs, whoever connects later on pays a fee, and the developer's reimbursed for that.
So going back to my last question,
But there's other things, like for instance, the developer does not build a sewer plant to meet his needs. We have to bid.
Well, going back to my question, when PUB provides the line to that subdivision, that stretches to that subdivision, who pays for that? The developer or the ratepayer?
developer.
The developer's paying for
In
the,
other words, if you have a piece of property, you come in, you need to extend the line from me to you. You pay for
from
that.
Brownsville to out here,
And
511.
if you oversize that, other people connect, and you get reimbursed over a 15-year period. Now, what it doesn't for is what you're connecting into from there to the sewer plant, or there to the water plant that need to be expanded. That's the stuff that's in the impact fees and in the rates right now.
And they don't pay for that.
Very little, they pay a little bit of it with the $250 instead of or the $280 instead of the $2,000.
What I recommend, Eddie, is that you perhaps, somebody from the water, wastewater, sit down with the commissioner and go over specifically what those impact fees would cover, Commissioner. That way you understand, it's not something that is covered by the developer. It's got to be covered either by the ratepayers or the developer. It hasn't been. So I recommend that you sit down, somebody.
We'd be glad to do that.
Mr. Cardenas, you have something to add to this? You've been.
I welcome open talks.
Well,
After you find
We're
out.
probably gonna do it again over there.
It's good, Commissioner, that you come over here and check it out.
Let me just say this, Commissioner, that, like we told you before, we do the extension. PUB is charged for responsibility of an area, okay? They're supposed to service us. They're supposed to bring us the water and the sewer. They're supposed to service the area. They haven't done it. We developers of the Wani, we go buy a piece of property out there, like we did. We have to extend the lines. We have to do the lift stations. We have to oversize it. We have everything they want, we have to do. At our cost. PUB does not pay a penny, not one penny.
Is that true?
Is that true, John, or
Yeah,
not?
but what I'm saying is he gets reimbursement agreements.
No, I have yet to get reimbursed. You might have a policy, but I have yet to get, I've done about 50. I have never
And how
gotten
did you
one
recover
penny.
your costs?
What's that?
How did you recover your costs for those? Sure,
I have-
you've already recovered it.
I have to add it to the subdivision.
You've already recovered those costs.
Yeah,
But that's not the point.
Well, I understand, but I'm
The
just
point
saying
is
you
you're
didn't use
responsible
those
for an
costs.
area. You're responsible for an area which you're not servicing.
We have a service policy in place. that-
But you have that policy, but you should have taken it out on the night, when they made the study, you should have taken it out. Because double dipping.
No, we're not.
We're doing the extension, and we're paying the impact fees. It might be 280,
And
but
your
we,
impact fee is not going towards your extension.
John,
I'm telling you. We can-
John, did they pay for the sewer plant?
No.
that's the only
They
thing we don't,
pay for any service needed related to their subdivision to provide the service to that subdivision?
No.
Does the $280 pay a fraction of it?
Small fraction.
It pays administrative costs.
Small
That's
amount
about it.
that's in the rates.
So I mean, can you imagine the 90 million that we spend? That's on top of what they spent to develop their subdivision. The 90 million above was paid by the ratepayers.
let me tell you, we give you the subdivision, water and sewer complete. You don't pay one penny of that, okay? We give you the extensions complete. You don't pay one penny of that.
Do you make any money
We
off
give
of
you the
that?
oversize, you don't pay one penny of that.
But do you make any money off of that? Are you
Of
giving
course,
us
I'm in
some?
business to make money.
Of course, that's what you're there to make money, but it's not at our expense.
It's
where
not, I'm not
everybody
making it
else
at your
has to pay to
expense.
make
I'm
money.
just telling you, we pay for everything.
But you want us to pay so you can make money.
You're
That's
not
what you
gonna
want
pay
us to
for,
do.
hey,
You want us to pay so you can make money.
you double dipping.
No, sir.
Well, that's your opinion. I'm
No,
the
it's
guy
not-
putting
it's a
up the
fact.
cash.
It's a fact.
I just want to make that point to you, Commissioner, that we do pay for everything, okay? And if you go through the law, the 395, that's when we find out. Any amount of money, the impact fee that we pay has to be done for that particular subdivision or the water or sewer plants. That's it.
Mr. Hudson?
Your friend, Mr. Lewis.
Hi, I don't have anything to add that I haven't already said, except I would like to offer, once again, these is the NAHB statement on what the builders and developers have done last year. And also the impact fee handbook. It has the good and the bad, and I would really urge everybody to check the facts. That's all I've got to say.
Mr. Hudson, whose facts have you checked?
Well, the letter of the law, 395.
Just kidding.
And for example, as to the impact fee studies and whatnot, 2 words, Lincoln, Nebraska.
We got it. Give him our facts. will you? Good to see you, Bill.
Is that gonna be it?
Was there a perfect, that was
You have any
perfect?
more
That's
questions?
kind of where we are.
But I urge you to get with water, wastewater, and maybe the assistant, and go over the detailed cost, okay? That's not covered by developers. That has to be covered by someone at this time. I think that's very important, because if you decide to cut back from the maximum allowable, you're gonna have to raise rates. And as long as I'm here, and I think most of us here, we're not for raising rates here. Now, if you force us to raise rates, it's not us raising rates, it's you raising rates from the commission. We did our job.
Even with the maximum fee, the rates will still have to go up. It won't be as much as what we projected in the next 5 years. We're working on that right now to have a comparison, impact fee to rates, half, all of it, none of it, quarter of it, and you'll know.
So 70% of the reason why our rates went up is gas and all these other reasons?
Now, that's separate. Separate. On your utility bill, you get a charge for the cost of fuel. That's independent of everything else. If the fuel goes up, your rate goes up on that cost. If the fuel goes down, cost goes down.
An example of that, for if you compare what your fuel and purchase energy charge was in May, it was 7.45 cents. It was cut by a little over a penny in June to 6.4, and then the current rate is 6 cents. So because of the way we operate, we've been able to reduce the fuel and purchase energy charge by almost a penny and a half in the last 2 months. And that will happen. I mean, you'll see that throughout the year. The gas market is starting to stabilize, and we're starting to see those prices go down.
So raising the rate will do what for us in 5 years? The impact fee, what is it gonna do for the city of Brownsville?
Help pay for the $83 million of improvements we've got to make.
Okay.
It'll go to pay the capital improvements needed to meet the future growth. That's what it'll go, the 84.6 million is what it paid for that. If it's not paid, then we can't handle the growth, we gotta stop.
Or raise the
Or
rates
raise
higher.
rates. Or raise rates. We did our part where the issue was never talked about. People didn't know what was going on. People didn't realize they were subsidizing developers through their utility bill. People didn't know that. We brought the issue to the table, and the debate is healthy. Some people may disagree, that people prefer to keep people in the dark. Whether you agree with us or not, that does not matter. The good thing is that people are more aware now, and it's up for debate, and it's up for the commission to approve or decide what to do.
Now, all of you as a group are in consensus, or?
We were in consensus as far as putting together a capital improvements committee and a plan, and forwarding the recommendations to the commission. That was our job. That's our job here. Our job's not to adopt the rates. We have to do what you tell us to do. We ask the ratepayers to subsidize developers, or we charge developers for the capital improvements needed. But you're gonna have to tell us what to do.
We're not the experts on what to set the impact fee at. We hired somebody.
Obviously, I'm not an expert.
Yeah,
either.
well, that's right,
We hired somebody.
but that's why you're not gonna, it's already there. So then, they're recommending that for what we need, the capital improvement in 5 years, that's what it is.
So is there a range or an actual cost?
The cost is $3,090
Per meter.
per meter.
That's a maximum, but it's not.
The maximum
I've
is
never
that
read that.
you can't go above that.
Okay,
In
but
other words-
is it a straight deal, or why do they put a range?
But let me tell you, $3,090 will cover the 84.6 million infrastructure need.
That's not true, it covers half.
Okay, the half, okay, it covers the half, the rest is gonna be covered by us, okay? Out of the 140 million, right?
No.
Out of the 140 million, 84.6 is attributed to the
It
infrastructure.
will
needed
count
for-
the impact
yeah,
fees.
that. And out of that's the half, right?
Yeah, it'll cover about half of the 80.
Okay, and then we cover the other.
Yeah, because we can't collect that much in that amount of time in 5 years.
That's what it is. Regardless,
When you say we, it's the ratepayer.
regardless, the $3,090 will go to cover that 84 million, a portion of that 84 million. Do it? Portion of the half of the 84 million. If you decide not to do it, then who's gonna cover the other half?
Explain why you have to pay half.
Pardon me?
Why do we have to pay half?
Well, you can't recover it all in that short a period.
That's his question.
What the amount is, what they're talking about is that you've identified about $84.6 million worth of projects. If all of the assumptions hold true in terms of the growth in the number of equivalent service units, and all of that happens, then over the 5-year period with that impact fee at $3,090, you would recover approximately, and I was looking for the number exactly, but about $45 million. You're not going to recover the full 84.6 over a 5-year period. Conversely, if you set the impact fee at half that amount, okay, and all the assumptions hold through, well, then you're only going to collect towards the cost of implementing those improvements, half of that amount, $25 million. If you
So
set
is
it,
there a range or is it a set fee?
the range would be determined
So
by.
there is a range.
Well, if you're going to look at a range, it's going to be determined by your ability to fund projects. You're either going to do them or you're not. Your ability to generate revenue to do the projects, and if you don't get it from impact fees or from other fees, then you get it through rates. I mean, and so you're going to pay for it one way or other. Impact fees help contribute towards the cost of implementing those capital improvements. They help you mitigate the dependence solely on rates to fund that.
But also, correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't reviewed the study before coming here, I didn't review it before coming here. But the half is being covered by the 3,090, but the remainder will be covered eventually by the additional impact fees. I mean, it's not like it's not going to get paid, it will get paid.
You'll continue to collect an impact
Continue to
fee,
get that.
but
So I mean, it will be covered eventually.
But it will have to be covered in another study with another project, because you can only what the impact is can be collected. In other words, only that half is attributable to the new development. And the next 5-year plan will determine what other improvements, and every 6 months, you're supposed to review what is actually getting built and is what actually is going to be used. So, for instance, if 1,000 homes, let's say, if only half the homes get built that you are projecting, every 6 months then you need to reevaluate what the impact's going to be and what you're going to need, and that should also impact what you will charge as an impact fee. Because if the growth does not meet your projections, neither should the impact fee, because you will not be needing the facilities that are in the plan. And our study says that every $1,000 of cost in this community with our income will reduce the sales by 11%. So you should have 11% fewer less homes being built with a $1,000 impact fee, 22% fewer homes being built with a $2,000 impact fee, and 33% fewer homes being built with a $3,000 impact fee. And that will also mitigate what you need in improvements, because you will have much slower growth. Now, when Mr. Campidano says growth is important because PUB salaries are not going down. So you fund yourselves with growth. That is how you fund yourselves, and that's how you fund your employees, but with growth. Because if you stay stagnant, you're not going to be able to keep employees, because you're not going to be able to pay them more as wages go up and as needs go up. So you can't stagnate growth. So you are looking to grow, and you are looking to have increased business, because that is how you are going to sustain your own growth.
Commissioner, just something I saw, and I've noticed, it'll come down to the voting that day, and you'll see which commissioner and or mayor is ethical and responsible. The ones that probably vote for the low fee probably got funds for their campaign. And that's just my comment, but it's common sense. Commissioner, why out of order? It makes sense.
Let me ask you something.
Obviously, you didn't get any money from them, so.
Let me ask you something.
Let me tell you something.
Our lawyers, our PUB lawyers, developers' lawyers, have they sat down to talk about this, or have they, or is there, our city lawyers with our PUB lawyers, have they sat down and talked? Have they had any discussions with the lawyers of the developers to see?
What does the lawyers have to do with
Well,
capital improvements?
just to find a median, because obviously there's going to be pending lawsuits and stuff like that. I just want to know if there's other people conversing on
The
this.
city's attorney and our attorney at DEP have met. We have not, attorneys from the city, or I don't believe, have met with the developer's attorney, other than in some correspondence in writing.
John, didn't the city commission appoint the capital improvements committee?
Yes.
So the city commission actually appointed the capital improvements committee. That was their role. So, you know, if they've been involved since the beginning, obviously the answer is that.
And it's been a joint, it's been a joint effort. But one thing that was noted, that yes, we're supposed to revisit the plan and adjust it accordingly. But I think the misconception here, correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie, is, for instance, I believe the ESUs, the equivalent service units to meet 5 years' growth, was estimated at 14,778, okay? If, like Mrs. McNair says, growth slows down, and I don't think it's attributed to the impact fees, like she's saying, but regardless, okay? Let's say growth slows down. We still need to build that sewer plant. We still got to build it to meet that need over here, okay? So if we build that sewer plant, the ESUs goes down, the impact fee does not go down. It goes up.
So the rates. So the rates.
The rates, yeah. It goes up because it's going to take more money from less users to meet the demand for that sewer plant, or whatever. So we want growth, but we don't want growth that's being subsidized by everybody else. It should be paid by those that are incurring the growth. They make money doing this. That's a risk they take.
And on the impact fee study, even the Black and Beach, the guys that did the impact fee study says that developers will say that, you know, it's gonna stunt growth, but that hasn't been seen in the study that they've done. And they've done a bunch of them, they've done in San Antonio.
Just one question. Eddie, how many ESUs will the new sewer plant handle?
I can't tell you.
Just roughly?
14,778, how many of them would be diverted strictly to?
But the
I don't know that off the top of my head.
the capacity of
Well, you're
the
looking
new
at a
sewer plant.
5 million gallon per day facility.
And that covers
And
approximately,
that's what's in the CIP right now.
and that, how many ESU
Not
would
all of
handle?
that is going to the north plant.
Right.
I mean, you're gonna divert some of that to your existing facilities. Remember, you have 2 plants that you have already.
Will it, so therefore, in 5 years, we won't need another sewer plant?
The thought is that in 5 years, you're gonna have to expand the existing one, or you're gonna have to do a new one. That's where the discussion is. And you're going to have to do something, because you're already at, you're gonna be, if you just did nothing and continue the way you are, you're gonna be at capacity at the North Sewage Treatment Plant. And so that's the one that is causing the pressure to either expand it or to build a new one on that side of town to handle the growth that's anticipated on the north side of town.
Oh, yeah, but we're gonna put the new one in.
The question is, in 5 years,
After we put the new one in.
depending on growth, we'll look at that after 5 years, but probably not.
You know, you're going to,
Well, that's why, you know, he needs to understand that, yeah, he made a statement that we're going to just multiply 84 times 2 and have $164 million if we go to 10 years. That's not true.
No.
Because the sewer plant won't be part of it.
No,
But on the same token, we could have to expand south.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And that could be 30 million, so it could be,
whatever the cost is.
We'll pick up costs there, but we're going to pick up ESUs also. But we're not going to pick up our sewer plant, and we're not going to pick up our 22 million to upgrade those 11 lift stations.
Whatever the amount of ESUs would be in 10
We
years.
just need to feed them the information.
yeah.
Yeah, but whatever the ESUs would be in 10 years. That was my intent.
Yeah, but it doesn't double the cost.
Well, no, of course, I don't have a crystal ball to tell you
And
that.
then also, you are, I believe, misinformed or don't understand that what is attributable to growth is what is the impact fee. The other part would always have to be paid by rates. It is not attributable to impact.
It's from the revenues generated by the projects that we're getting, that the developers,
They're gonna start collecting revenues off of all these subdivisions that are handed over. Raymond Court, I'm with Enosin. And So they're gonna get those revenues in based on those projects being completed. You know, water charges, sewer charges, electrical charges, everything's coming in, the revenues. Nobody's talking about the revenues, but that's factored in, and that's why a certain percentage of it, of the 84 million, is paid by them, by PUB.
By the rate,
Anticipated
The rate
growth is factored into the formula.
Yeah,
That's
it's
why we
factored in,
established
yeah.
why
by the new
the
rate.
equivalent service units are,
Yes.
so you can credit that back, because you are gonna generate revenue from that. If you didn't do that, then you might be looking at funding a far greater amount. Exactly. But it is taken into
Could I
account.
make a
Do you have
suggestion?
any other questions, Charlie?
I didn't review the study before coming, it's been a while since I looked at it, there's so many things going on. Can you give them a copy of the study?
Absolutely. In fact, we did forward a copy to City Hall and with all the information.
Read the study, I recommend it, read it, I mean, the experts are telling, independent,
And we'll,
everybody.
and we'll make sure that when the final report is completed, we'll forward copies of the final report to each member of the commission as well.
But if you have,
How do we get the public involved in this?
That's what the public
Public
hearing process
hearings.
is all about.
You're gonna have,
That's why you have to have the public hearings.
Commissioners, there's two things that this board can't do. They can't approve an impact fee, and they can't approve rates. That's the commission. Well, we're gonna recommend on the rates, but we don't have any control on that.
any other questions, Commissioner?
I just want to thank you all for explaining a little bit of what we're gonna have to go through in the future. And the best way to know is to get involved, and that's why I'm here.
We
And
appreciate that.
I'm gonna give my constituents the best choice of what an impact.
Read that thing, that study, that's gonna be helpful. Anything else you wanna add, nobody else? All right, it's gonna conclude our workshop, and we're gonna go ahead and move into the executive session. I'm gonna call this meeting to order. Go ahead, let me see. There was no action taken in executive session. We're gonna move on to item number 2, General Manager's report.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I have is financial report. And
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Andrew Garcia. I'm the Director of Finance and Chief Financial Officer for Brownsville PUB. And I'll be providing you with an overview of the financial performance report for May 2006. On this slide here, we provide a summary of adjusted gross revenues. First, we begin with May net operating revenues. We're at $15,784,149. Year to date, net operating revenues were $119,038. Gross revenues, when you add in other revenues, interest from investments, and other non-operating income, totaled to $16,585,669 for May, and $124,832,385 year to date. We'll be going over some of the specifics of the components of the fund summary, but here you can see that our fuel and energy cost year to date totaled $46.2 million. For May, it was $6.2 million. Wholesale energy expenses associated with wholesale revenues totaled to $12.8 million year to date. When you compare that to the $15.7 million up above, you can see that we're netting a good almost $3 million of our wholesale sales activity. Southmost requirements totaled to $308,000 for May and $2.5 million through the end of May, for a total adjusted gross revenues of $63.1 million year to date and $9.2 million through May. O&M expenses for the month of May totaled $3.3 million, year to date $27.2 million. Debt service obligations $15.7 million year to date, $1,900,835 for the month of May. Our total requirements, excluding the fuel and Southmost, total $42,989,701 year to date, and $5,245,053 for the month of May. This, when you take these requirements off our gross revenues, leaves a balance available to surplus of $17,051,567 through May, $3.5 million of that coming during the month of May. The breakdown, the split of these surplus revenues, $3 million year to date will be going to the city of Brownsville, net of their usage, $3,198,621, and $13,852,946 is available for PUB. That $13,852,000 has satisfied our monthly contributions to the various reserves and planned CIP transfers as part of our 06 budget. Operating reserve addition. This is part of the budgeted amount of $1 million, increase in operating reserve, $666,000 year to date. Our fuel adjustment, operating sub-account has received $2,666,696. This is part of our $4 million budgeted amount for supplementing our fuel. CIP scheduled transfer, $7,133,000. This is part of our $10 million annual contribution to CIP projects out of current revenues. And then we have an improvement reserve fund. We've contributed $2 million. This is part of the $3 million annual budgeted amount. That $3 million being one-fifth of the $15 million 5-year planned contributions here, or build-up of this improvement reserve fund. Our surplus is looking good. This is after all the buckets are met. We had budgeted $700,000 for the year. We're at $1,386,218 as of the end of May. Yes, sir.
Just a point so the audience understands. The reserves have been built up substantially compared to a year ago that we had.
Yes, sir.
That they could be wiped out if we were to have an emergency situation like a hurricane or something like that. So I don't want people to get the wrong idea that we're rich in liquid when we're really not there yet, or we should be.
This satisfied one of the rating agency requirements to have PUB in a status of having liquidity to respond to emergency situations. By building these reserves, that did contribute to favorable ratings last year.
Where were we a year ago, more or less?
A year ago, well, we didn't have any planned reserve. We had some balances in our improvement and plan fund, but they weren't strategically accumulating for these purposes.
We've come a long way, so that's right.
So
And this
just
does not include the $12.5 million that was part of the refinance that was set up as well. That one we did not have in place last year.
So
That's
the
correct.
picture's a lot healthier than it was a year ago due to everything that's been done.
Very, very healthy situation.
I want to commend all of you and the board for taking a proactive approach to all this, and of course the requirements that we're meeting by law.
Thank you. On the next few slides, I'm going to show a comparison of actual 2006 activity to budgeted activity, or projected budgeted, and then actual 2005. I'll go through these slides pretty quick here. As mentioned earlier, net operating revenues of $119 million compare favorably to our budgeted net operating revenues of $99.7. This is 19.7 favorable variance, or 19.4%. Compared to 05, we're exceeding the 05 accomplishment by $33.9 million, or 40%. Gross revenues of $124.8 million are exceeding budgeted estimates by $21.3 million, or 20.5%. When you compare to that middle column there, 103.5. Compared to 2005 actual, we're 35.7 million above that accomplishment last year, or 40%. Our adjusted gross revenues, here again is when we adjust for the fuel and Southmost, leaves us with $63.2 million, which is $3.2 million over the budgeted projections of $60 million, an increase of 5.3% there. Compared to the $52.2 million achieved last year, it's $11 million over that amount, or 21.1%. Our fuel and energy cost, as everyone's aware, is continued to increase, primarily our natural gas requirements. Through the end of May, we have spent $46.3 million, which is $6.2 million above our budgeted projections, or 15.5%. Compared to the same time period last year, 31.1 million, we're exceeding that amount by 15.2 million, or 48.9%. O&M expenses due to cost containment, asbestos has been achieved here by directors and managers. We are under budget. Our actual expenses for 2006 are at 25.3 million compared to what we had projected through May, 26.2 million. This is $900,000 under, or 3.4%. We are slightly higher than the 05 May number of 23 million, over that by 2.3 million, or 10%. The balance available to surplus, 17.1 million, far exceeds the 13.7 million that we had projected through May. That's a 3.4 million favorable variance, or 24.8%. And then again, here it exceeds by 5.6 million, or 2005 actual amount of 11.5 million. Available to PUB, the balance there at 13.9 million is also 3.7 million over our 10.2 million projected balance, and well above the 9.2 achieved last year. Cash transfer to the city, that 3.2 million is slightly under the budgeted 3.5 million. As you all know, that amount is driven by the COB usage, so as electric and water consumption, as well as wastewater flows increase, those tend to offset some of the calculated 10% city transfers. So we are slightly under that amount. This next graph shows the balance that comes from the electric, water, and sewer. 12.2 coming from electric, 1.69 from water, and 3,070,000 from the sewer. Next couple of slides show the trend of consumption for electric and water, and then wastewater flows. Here we did have an increase between April and May, going from 84 million gallons up to 102 million kWh, in consumption here for the month of May. That was an increase of 17 million, or 20% in kWh consumption. Compared to the 2005 actual of 80 million, we far exceeded that by 22 million, or 27.3% in kWh consumption. Our water consumption seemed to have dropped from April to May. It kind of follows the same pattern as 2005. We were at 643 million gallons in April, dropped down to 594 in May. That was a drop of 7.6%, but well above the 539 million gallons as of 2005. So we're about 10% above last year's consumption through May. Similar pattern here for wastewater flows. We did drop from 456 million gallons in April to 370 in May. So obviously due to less water and perhaps less consumption due to, well, we didn't have rain, but just the less consumption conservation efforts in the community. On our CIP activity here, this chart here shows the progress concerning expenditures by utility for capital projects. A total of $19,688,000 has been spent and encumbered through the end of May for all three utilities and general expenses. $11.8 million in electric financing has been committed. 3.6 million in water, and 3.5 or 3.6 in wastewater. This, when you compare it to our budgeted spending plan of 39 million, almost 40 million, we're at almost 50% rate of expenditures through the end of May. That concludes the financial overview for May. If you have any questions, I would like to.
Anybody have any questions? consideration and approval of resolution relating to the execution of an interest rate cap agreement in connection with the City of Brownsville, Texas utility system, subordinate lien revenue and refunding funds, Series 2002A and 2002B, and other matters in connection with it.
Yes, on June 6, 2006, the financial advisor at Grant Hosa and Brownsville PB staff met with the Finance Committee to provide them with an overview of a plan concerning a 5-year interest rate cap hedging agreement in connection with the City of Brownsville, the subordinate lien revenue refunding bonds, Series 2002A and B. We also had a workshop with the board on June 12th and provided additional information on our strategy for mitigating some of the interest rate risks there concerning those variable rate bonds. The purpose of this hedging is to eliminate the risk of interest rate fluctuations that will become effective September 1, 2006. So with this, we do recommend approval of a resolution authorizing the general manager and chief executive officer and chief financial officer to negotiate an interest rate cap agreement and other matters in connection herewith. And we do plan to take this item, once you approve it, to the City Commission. We're looking at a commission action date of the 25th and 26th of July, and then go to market thereafter and see if we can obtain some favorable premiums on this interest rate cap.
The committee approved it unanimously. I recommend it.
Do we have any questions? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Alvarado, second by Mr. Garcia. All those in favor? Aye. All those against, motion passes. Consideration and approval of emergency funds for repair of Unit 9 combustion turbine.
This was taken up in executive session. I make the motion to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Ahmad, second by Mr. Sanchez. All those in favor? Aye. All those against, motion passes. Item 5, presentation by Norris Consulting Engineering on feasibility study on the Banco Morales property for the new raw water reservoir, and consideration and approval authorizing the general manager and chief executive officer to go out for proposals for design of the Banco Morales reservoir. If we can just, if you don't mind, I'd like to entertain a motion to just authorize the general manager to go out for proposals, and if we can save the presentation
The next meeting
at the
and
next
select the.
just so the other board members will be here, so the other board members will be here.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Sanchez, second by Mr. Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against, motion passes. Item number 6, consideration and approval of budget amendment to Brownsville PUB's fiscal year 2006 budget. Mr. Garcia.
Yes, we've did a review of our financial status, as you can see in my presentation, and did a 6-month review, and we are requesting a budget amendment to increase revenues. We have done a review of projected revenues to the end of the year and anticipate receiving another $2,150,000, of which $1,350,000 is expected from operating revenues and another $800,000 from investments. At the same time, we have identified a need for additional expenditures, $1.4 million being of additional legal fees and engineering fees, and then $350,000 associated with part of the premium associated with the interest rate cap. The net from these both amendments on the revenue and expense side is $400,000, which falls into the as a residual to the surplus for the PUB. So we do recommend approval to increase the fiscal year 2006 budget for a net earnings increase of $400,000 to reflect the increase in gross revenues as well as associated operating and non-operating expenses. And associated.
This budget approval is not for expenses, it's just based on what the projections were compared to what they are.
Item number 7 is going to be associated with this budget amendment, and it does call for increased authority and expenses, but
Okay,
yes.
what are you proposing on the expenses?
On the expenses, on the 1.4 million, non-personnel on it, that covers additional requirements for legal and engineering.
That has to do with the open union?
Some of it has had to do with due diligence and open union, some with with other requirements. We do have a list, and then some again here for additional expected costs for bond counsel as part of the interest rate cap. So we do have a chart attached to item 7 that gives some breakdowns. And we can go into item 7 at this point, or
If we approve this, it's like approving the next one.
Let's go to item 7.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and hold off on, do I have a motion, we can hold off on item 6 and jump into item 7?
They're all kind of tied together, so we can cover them all and then take
6
them one by
through-
one. 6 and 7.
6 and 7, all right, let's go into item number 7. Consideration and approval to amend approved amount October 10, 2005, authorizing the general manager, chief executive officer to approve legal and engineering services as needed.
But just on this, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, when we did the budget, we projected engineering and legal fees, and then we advised the board if we got close to where we were gonna overspend that, or some other things have come up, we would bring those back to the board for a budget amendment, and that's what these are, in those two areas.
Well, the legal was anticipated with the ongoing open meeting matter, right?
Yes.
Now, the engineering, operating maintenance engineering fees, that was not anticipated.
We've done some additional projects, some of it, and it's outlined on the, tab of what you have for, with its own, most of that is capitalized fees towards projects.
Ongoing project.
Some of that is also associated with OPE. Yeah, there's a chunk of that was with OPE.
But all these projects here that were approving additional expenses came before the board and was addressed that. Okay, I have no problem.
Do I have a motion for item 6 and 7?
I make a motion for item 6 and 7.
We have a motion by Mr. Ahmad. Second by Mr. Garcia, those in favor?
Aye.
All those against, the motion passes.
Nothing new there, right?
I want to go ahead and table item number 8.
So why is it 20?
We're not ready for that.
They're not ready.
It's something that's very basic. I mean, you're gonna need storm shutters.
we had anticipated a sooner installation, and when we got was a December installation. That's after hurricane, and we had hoped to gain some time by going through a state contract. So we're gonna actually put this up for procurement, for competitive procurement, and now change the schedule to have something in place perhaps by next April or May.
Have a motion? Motion to table, Mr. Garcia. Second by Mr. Sanchez, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Item number 9. Consideration and approval for purchase of 6 vehicles, bid number 019-06, and 1 backhoe with extendable B018-06. Mr. Garcia.
Yes, we are requesting, based on bids we obtained earlier this year, and we came to you here a few meetings ago, we want to provide additional vehicles to some our water and wastewater service crews. We're asking for permission or authorization to proceed with 3 half-ton pickup trucks from Tipa, Texas, with extended cab and bed liner at $14,354.20 each, and these would be going for use by our water and wastewater crews. We have added some additional personnel in some of those construction areas for rehabilitation crews. We are also replacing 3 vehicles for our meters reading folks, and these are the ones coming from Rodriguez Ford Mercury, 3 half-ton pickup trucks at $10,750. In addition, we're requesting authorization to acquire Doggett Heavy Machinery from Doggett Heavy Machinery Services, 1 backhoe loader with extended hoe and warranty at $71,298. We do have available funding for these items. They were on the list, but we had utilized some of the identified funding for vehicles in 06, and we are reallocating some funds to accommodate these that are available in our improvement fund.
Let me ask you, Leandro, I'm sure you all already looked into it, but for my own personal satisfaction information, Have you looked at leasing? Would it be cheaper than purchasing, or based on the mileage, it's just not feasible? The mileage we put on the trucks.
Most leasings do carry a financing charge, and we do use these vehicles for an extended period. I myself feel that since we have the cash available,
So it's not cheaper to
it's
lease?
better to buy. It's better to buy than to lease.
I just thought I'd ask a question.
There are financing companies out there right now with the rates going up. They want a higher return, on their lease.
Yeah, this also takes advantage of the good bid price we got on the package deal, and we don't have to come back and put these on next year's acquisition. We can take care of them this year, and look at next year's.
I so move.
Motion by Mr. Ahmad, second by Mr. Sanchez, all those in favor? Aye. All those against, motion passes. Item number 10, consideration and approval for purchase of a TK80HTG detachable gooseneck trailer.
I so move.
Motion by Mr. Ahmad, second by Mr. Garcia, all those in favor? Aye. All those against, motion passes. Item 11,
I would ask the chair to table 11, 12, and 13.
Second. Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
11, 12, and 13. Motion by Mr. Ahmad, second by Mr. Garcia, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those against, motion passes. Item number 14, update on hurricane preparedness and response. Mr. Ahmad.
I guess we're not getting the storm shelters in time for the hurricane.
No.
Let me ask you, I know this board approved sending personnel with expertise to take a proactive approach on hurricane problems faced by other communities. Did we ever send anybody?
We were gonna try to do that last
Year.
year, and major hurricanes hit, and we couldn't get over to Florida. In fact, Florida wouldn't, the people we were gonna talk to said they were real worried, busy, and we didn't follow up on that, but,
Maybe better go to Louisiana.
well, I think you know what's there. But we,
Do you think there's benefit to this, or it's not a good idea?
I think we could get some information maybe from them, what maybe saving a trip to go there and doing that.
Would you do that and get back with us?
Yeah,
To come up with a plan that would help us be proactive?
okay, we do that. We do have mutual aid agreements in place on the electric side and now on the water side. If we approve consent tonight for other utilities to help us upstate in the event of an emergency, a lot of those things are in place. And
For first responders, what's our policy as far as personnel to not leave, evacuate? Do we have a policy there?
Yes, we do.
Okay, we have a policy.
We have a emergency preparedness plan that we update every year. We have that ready. That does identify key personnel. It does identify who is on that first responder, who has responsibility to stay, how deep in the organization that
So
should
all
be.
we're waiting for is to see what happened in other communities perhaps that would help us.
yes.
We
You
have
can
had an
obtain that.
opportunity, and I know Lucy has had opportunity, there's a lot of information available. A lot of it is being sent out. ERCOT has done its planning based on the experiences that we saw last summer. So some of that has already been gleaned, and some of it that we've looked at.
And you're going to incorporate it into our plan?
Those areas that we would. And then there's also the component of the city of Brownsville. If you remember, is that, we take care, we lock down PUB, but then when it gets into the FEMA and gets into the state and federal requirements, we're just a component of the city as well, so we have to take into account that portion of it. We've done that. The only thing we haven't done this year that we did last year is we haven't done the tabletop this in terms of that mock exercise, but, all of our plans are in place.
And our financing is
We are-
being built up.
Our financing, we have, our plan covers everything. If you have to, take information out of here and secure it and set up operation elsewhere, our plan is in there. Obviously, the big difference to this year is we have more liquidity in terms of cash available to deal with the situation than we had last year. But all of those things are component units of our emergency preparedness plan.
And this is for the purpose of the public understanding what we're doing as PUB to prepare to meet their needs. That's why it was put on the agenda. Thank you.
Guys, no action needed there. We'll move on to item number 15. Updated status report on the Brownsville PUB and the Jardín Water Supply Plant to merge. Mr. Ahmad.
Okay, here, I requested this because one of the board members from El Jardín asked me, where were we on this issue? The last time we had a meeting about this, management was instructed to put a team together to go to, I think, the Texas Water Board, and who else?
I think Mr. Capiano and
Yeah.
you were gonna get together with Mr.
recall. And some of that dealt with some of the rules in place and how it would affect us, especially with the U.S. Department of Agriculture funding. A couple of things with that. Genoveva Gomez and myself, right after that board meeting or that workshop on May the 18th, we went to visit the U.S. Department of Agriculture representative in San Benito. And we wanted to ensure that some of the comments that were made and expressed as it relates to potential federal funding for El Jardín and what impact it might have on PUB, especially when you talk about loans. If you recall, one of the concerns that we have is that if there's any federal debt secured by El Jardín, would that limit our ability to go in and serve in those areas? What we got was a copy of a correspondence that essentially says that it is critical. If El Jardín were to incur federal debt, that does have an impact on whether or not we would have the ability to go in there and serve in those areas. There's two things with that. One of the things that the USDA has mandated now where you have issues with dual certification is that they require those issues to be worked out before they actually do any funding. If there isn't any funding in place, there is a law that does protect those entities that have federal funding from anyone else coming in and competing in those areas. So the concerns that we have about that federal funding have not gone away. If anything, they've been reinforced by the fact that the USDA does recognize that there is federal protection for those entities that do secure federal funding against competition. So that is one of the things that we wanted to ensure. The other thing we talked to them about is the funding levels and what kind of funding they had. Essentially, what they told us was that their funding levels have been going down, that if anything, the ratio of grants to loans now were more like 25% grants, 75% loan. Also, they told us that if the intent of this upgrade is to upgrade the system and turn around and turn it over to PUB, that would not be something they would look at favorably. And that if such were the case, then yes, the PUB would have to assume and pay back whatever loan would be applicable to that in that process. So both of those we reinforced. The other update that has occurred today is there was another funding potential for the El Jardín Water Supply Corporation, and that was the BEC funding, the Border Environmental Cooperation Commission. If you recall, it was reported that last year we submitted a joint application as co-applicants. PUB is not financially committed, but it is important to show that there is that cooperation, that ongoing to attempt to secure some funding for El Jardín. They didn't make the cut. In other words, the amount of funding that's available at BEC and the types of projects they're funding, El Jardín did not make the cut to even consider any funding. We've gone back again this year. El Jardín has resubmitted an application. We've gone in as a co-applicant to try another round. We will have to wait and see, depending on the numbers of projects they get in and the available funding, whether or not El Jardín would make the cut. The problem with that to a great degree is the types of projects that are being funded versus the kinds of projects that El Jardín is looking to fund. An example would be is that there's a small pot of money, but there's a lot of people competing for that pot of money. And the types of projects that receive higher priority are, for example, people that do not have water systems, or that have water systems that are contaminated, or that have water systems that are facing health issues. And the situation that we've got locally is that we have water system and distribution system that's a small size, and they're securing funding to increase the capacity. And so consequently, one of the reasons El Jardín did not make the cut last year is because those kinds of projects are considered second tier and not priority tier. So we'll have to wait and see how that's reviewed this year. But we did receive some correspondence that kind of restates that there is a concern over the dual certification issue, and then there would be a concern over the issue of a federal loan in terms of that federal protection, how it applies to PUB. And that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, also, PUB was supposed to look at a plan for capital improvements on the water supply system.
That is
With the
over on the
cost-
water and wastewater
With the
side.
cost and time frame.
Yeah, I'll let Gigi
And
address that.
before you copy of the correspondence been forwarded to the board members of El Jardín Water Supply?
They actually have it. That correspondence was, not only did we secure it from them, but also El Jardín provided a copy of it as well.
So I guess.
What I haven't done is provided that information to you.
Okay, well, you told us already. So I guess the next logical thing would be is to let them know where we're at and that we can go forward. Basically, it's up to them now, right?
Well, we asked for plans of their system. What we're gonna do is look at the.
Based on that, right.
Look on the improvements and how many years it would take. And I think we
The
just
cost.
got those. Or we're, Did you wanna comment?
We received the maps and, for the presentation, they had given us an estimate of 16.6 million. We went ahead and worked on an estimate and it came out to about 17.5 million. That is just to upgrade their 2 and 3 inch water lines to 8-inch water lines. Now, some of these lines, once they become PUB, they're in the PUB system, some of these lines, we would have to consider the master plan, and some of them would have to be 10 and 12 inch up to 16-inch water lines. So far, just to upgrade to 8-inch, it's about 17.5 million.
So it'll cost PB 17.5 million to upgrade them,
Just
to take over. Okay, but also, we have lines that are going parallel to them, so by taking over, by merging with, not taking over, by merging with El Jardín, we can duplicate, avoid the duplication of costs with the water lines being put alongside El Jardín.
We would have to go back and check the maps and see where we can do that.
Our system goes.
Yes, and then the other thing we would need to do again is we would need to look at the master plan and see where we would need bigger lines than 8-inch. We might have to go 10, 12, 16-inch lines in certain areas, and then at that point, we would have to come back with a different estimate.
Well, this is not an action item, but I would ask that management perhaps communicate to El Jardín your budget there, what you come up with, and let them know the time frame that you project, and let them know, again, repeat what Eddie just stated, that based on what they're telling us, USDA and everybody else, that, this is where we're at, and it's up to them if they want to merge it and when they want to merge.
Yeah, I think we need to have a plan. If it's 17 million, we could phase over 5 years. It's something that we could do, like we said, $2 million a year, would that be acceptable? But we couldn't do it all.
Right, but they need to know exactly what we can do, because they need to tell their customers, because those are the ones that are going to be affected. We want to bring them in so we can avoid duplication, okay? And if they want to merge with us, the alternative is this, what you're offering, what you're coming up with. But I think you need to communicate to them the time frame, the cost, what we cannot do, so they can let the customers know, hey, you're never going to get service in 5 years or 10 years, or you are, within a certain period of time.
The other thing that PB needs to do is, we need to get together and find out of the 17 million or 17.5 million, what is reasonable and what, we need to prioritize our jobs, not only, have this, but everything else, because there's certain lines that you're only gonna service, let's say, 5 different, homes, and you're gonna spend a few $1 million. Is that feasible, or should you work on other projects that are gonna be servicing more people? So that's something else that we
Is
need
this
to
going to
consider.
adversely affect our wastewater? This merge?
This,
It shouldn't, right?
no, this is just the water side.
It's just- No, that's, I think,
All right, thank you very much. Are we gonna go to, there was no action needed on that item, item number 16, consideration and approval of BPUB's property insurance renewal. This is a matter.
the finance committee met on this, and we
What
looked
was
at it.
your recommendation?
We strongly recommend to do the refunds.
Is that your motion?
I'll second.
That's a motion by Mr. Ahmad, a second by Mr. Sanchez. All those in favor? Aye. All those against? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Do we have any consent item agendas that we need to look at?
I move, unless the board has any questions.
second.
1 through 15.
We have a motion by Mr. Ahmad, second by Mr. Sanchez. All those in favor? Aye. All those against? No, any public comments?
I will make comment.
You're not a public.
I think Oscar, is this your last meeting?
Well, I was gonna,
Oh, then I'm gonna do that to
I
you.
was gonna say that. This is Mr. Oscar Garcia's last meeting.
You cannot make a copy.
He's been with us for 8 years.
Former chairman.
That's right, and you know, this, and I think he only missed one meeting in those 8 years. Wow. But, you know, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for being here, Oscar. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I'll see you at Home Depot. I always do. It seems like we see each other at the Home Depot.
Well, thank everybody for being so cordial and so visionary, and I hope it continues.
And you get a pencil for
Yeah,
your 8 years.
Thank you very much.
I want to add to echo what the chairman said, because sometimes you may agree or disagree with board members or the public when you're trying to serve the public. It's volunteerism. And the fact he's volunteered for 8 years, I think deserves recognition. I hope the commission maybe does a little resolution or something, maybe the commission can do it, for his public service, because it was a commitment to PUP of 8-year service. He was our former chairman, and that's something that I think is noteworthy of recognition.
I really don't need a resolution or anything.
But,
I want to thank you for letting me serve, okay?
I don't think it's up to him, he can do it. Anyway, thank you, Oscar, myself and everybody else.
Oscar, just from my point, a pleasure working with you for 8 years. Learned a lot from you, and we've done a lot of good projects. As a board member, you've always been available, always concerned, and pleasure to work with as a board member.
Thank you, John. I think we accomplished a whole bunch of things, and the vision of the board is very important for to meet the city needs, and I think it keeps on. I hope it continues.
And Oscar, we're giving you a good farewell, but we can't take it away from your another colleague that was on the board is Mr. Billy Bradford. We didn't get to do a farewell to him
Well, I didn't know that it was his last meeting, also.
at one time. But we thank you, Oscar.
Well, I want to thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you again. Do I have a motion, the last motion to close the meeting?
I move.
Motion by Mr. Garcia.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sanchez. Muy dispuesto.